Let's move on to the second topic at hand, if we can. The biggest fight of the weekend, and it was big in spectacle. It was certainly big in size with Andy Ruiz doing what he was doing, with Anthony Joshua winning back all of his titles against Andy Ruiz in the hotly anticipated rematch in Saudi Arabia. In the end, the story was very obvious. Anthony Joshua just outboxed him from basically pillar to post. It was the jab, Brian Campbell, the lateral movement.
Everything I said last week. I don't know if you watch the show when you're not on it.
I certainly do. I'll go to you first on this. The biggest takeaway from the fight is what?
I mean, the biggest takeaway is AJ put the train back on the tracks with really a clinical performance. And anyone after the fact who's saying, look, this guy ran, this guy was too safe. Look, to some elements, that kind of criticism is partially correct, but it's calculated. Why? Because he just got knocked the hell out and lost his unbeaten record and may have lost his invincibility, which was the whole narrative coming in. Could this global superstar put it back on and get in there and resume his career? From that side of the narrative, the lead story is what Joshua did. By having 3 or 4 belts, he has regained control of the heavyweight division. He's still the A player in a crowded field of marketable names with Wilder and Fury. Worldwide, dude, if you can command 90,000 in a soccer stadium against anyone, you still have that right. And he just, by the way, made $85 million on Saturday.
Fury can't?
Show me. Anyway, hold on. Let's roll on from there. But it's hard to say that's the biggest story when just as equally what Ruiz didn't do, and then you add in his post-fight comments. I mean, the words like a disgrace may be hard, but it was disgraceful the way Ruiz carried himself from the feel-good story victory on June 1st to what happened inside the ring there. And him coming in 15 pounds overweight on Friday, and then there was still that 24 hours of, well, maybe he's added so much muscle, maybe blah, 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 maybe this, maybe that. It wasn't a horrible performance from Ruiz, but it was certainly a performance that was...
second class.
That was second class, and that was, held down by his fitness coming in. I mean, he took off that shirt and you saw a tattoo on Titi saying FAT right from the start, and you're like, oh man. And the fact that he had a potentially wounded guy in front of him, and this fight was constructed for us to get our answers. Could AJ still be that guy? I don't really know now if AJ could still be that guy, because Ruiz was limited to one punch at a time. He certainly didn't have the pace and the aggressiveness that he had the first time. And then afterwards, for him to so honestly say, this is a time where honesty is a bad idea, to say, I partied for 3 months and I didn't think it would affect me, but it did. And to say, sorry, trainer Manny Robles, but I largely trained myself for the last few months. And saying, I didn't think the extra weight would bother me. It's sad because this was such a big event, and to a certain degree, it's tainted by what Ruiz didn't do. And anyone that wants to tell me, well, Joshua fought so boring. Dude, he's trying to save his career.
Right.
Get on Ruiz for not getting in there and making that a fight.
So my takeaway from it was, certainly I agree with just about all of that. I would just add, there are real and I mean this sincerely, there are real ingredients for success long-term. Who are the ones who become A-plus players? And the reality is, I think a few things have to happen. It has to happen in a way where it incrementally builds over itself, so you're used to each stage before the next stage comes. Why do people who win the lottery so often end up spending all of their money, or broke, or people who go right from high school to the NBA who don't have good counseling? Sometimes, like Kwame Brown blows through all their money, or
Robert
something.
Swift trashed that house in Seattle. Yeah.
But the point being is, you don't know how to handle success. And it wasn't like he was some scrub. Again, he had a pretty, I think, relatively decorated background in boxing prior to this, but he didn't have the adulation. He didn't have all the visibility. And once he did, he simply didn't know, honestly, he didn't know what it meant. He didn't really know what to do with it, which is why he said he partied a little bit, because he probably thought it was going to go.
A little bit. I mean, you now go back and see the evidence that we got. I don't know if you saw that YouTube series, Dank City, that followed him around and did a 4-part thing, and all he's doing in there is eating chicken wings and pizza, and then we're like, well, was that one celebratory meal, or was that how he is? And you see sort of, there were clues along the way, spending the money, partying, all that stuff. It could have just been in a little pocket. We didn't know to blow it up. We didn't know what it was. But I'm telling you, the moment he took off his shirt in the ring on Saturday, you got your first inclination that, this didn't go in the right direction. When the whole training camp he talked about getting slim.
It's more than that, too. It's more than just how did he manage his life. The naivete to say you thought it would be just like it was the last time.
Well, the naivete to train yourself? Like, what are you doing here?
And by the way, I don't know if you saw his dad comment afterwards. His dad I won't throw him under the bus, but his dad didn't hold back, and good for him. My point being is, if these are levels of success that happened like this versus steadily climbing a ladder, even climbing the ladder very quickly, you just don't know how to handle any of it. And he didn't. And I honestly, like, to say, yes, all of the overeating, all of the lack of training, all of the partying, all of the spending, I'm with you on. I was taken aback when he was like, "Yeah, I thought it'd be like that in June." It's
too honest.
My point is, like, Andy, you might have been the only person on earth who thought it would be just like the first time. Even us who had, hey, maybe Andy has a chance at doing this. None of us believed it would be the same. It'd be something new. He just waltzed in there utterly unprepared for the moment.
It's sad that, whether it was a combination of his manager, his trainer, his father, promoters, that as a whole, they weren't able to reel this in. Like, I don't like when sometimes there's a random injury that calls out a fight. So people say, did that injury really happen? Did they fake it for whatever? This would almost been a reason to fake an injury and really get this to a point where you can compete. You know why no one knew his name outside of hardcore boxing fans coming in? Because he had showed flashes of ability, but he never could get over the hump and be disciplined. And in his biggest possible moment, outside of that June 1st upset, he had the chance to show us how great he can be, and he punted. And that's really sad, because him at his very best, that would have been a hell of a fun fight. That's super important. And now who knows? Is he going to drift away? Is he going to come back in big fights? All I know is that between him, Eddie Hearn, and Anthony Joshua, after the fight, all using that word trilogy, get the hell out of here.
Yeah,
He's got a long way to come back before we ever want to see that.
I mean, it's like, dude, I'm not going to call the first time a fluke, but you basically burst onto the scene through what let's call an unlikely win, right? I mean, in terms of expectations. Then a chance where everyone had an opportunity to recalibrate. Your recalibration is to hit the brakes instead of the gas. I mean, you're telling the world that's who you are. You're telling the world that when the wind is at your back, you just decide to kick your feet up rather than let's build, let's pursue, let's grow, let's challenge. He didn't do it.
Sadly, it was Buster Douglas all over again. It really was, sadly.
There's no chance they make a third fight, at least not anytime soon. Which brings us to the next part of this. I just, look, maybe he'll fight, that being Anthony Joshua. Maybe he'll fight Fury. I wouldn't rule that part out if things have to happen for that to be in place.
But to me, what has to happen is Tyson Fury's ESPN contract to run out for that to happen. That's really what's going to happen.
Okay, well, I'm not going to say it's utterly impossible, but let's say there's some challenges there. But the one fight to me that seems it'll never happen would be Wilder, in part because just boxing politics with him being with PBC and not, which would have been great, because if Ruiz had won with being with PBC, they could have made that. And by the way, Deontay Wilder savaging Ruiz over the weekend, and he spoke to Akin Barak from DAZN, as well as Lance Pugmire from The Athletic. But the key for me is I just don't buy that Anthony Joshua is going to fight either of them anytime soon. So here's the question.
Let me break that down.
I'll let you go. Is it Dillian White next? Is it, I don't know, Chisora next? Who is Anthony Joshua going to take on next? Because it's not going to be Fury and it's not going to be Wilder.
AJ's got 3 titles. The mandatories are lining up. It's probably more than likely going to be somebody like a Kubrat Pulev, who he was supposed to fight back a year and a half ago.
Let me lather up in the greatness of that bout.
Alexander Usyk as one of his mandatories. That's a more difficult fight because we don't really know yet if Usyk is a legitimate heavyweight.
Right.
I would guess that he would fight like a Pulev first and then maybe rematch a Dillian White, who also won over the weekend, even though he wasn't in great shape. The rematch would be huge in the UK. That's more likely where he's going in 2020, while Wilder Fury are going against each other in February, maybe even a third time. There's some rumors in terms of what the language of the contract means. But the whole idea of AJ fighting Wilder, or really fighting anyone else that's non-DAZN and has their own TV deal, I think we still have a problem. This is going to sound like in the weeds and inside baseball, but boxing is still handcuffed by politics and the internal idea that, well, I fight exclusively for this network. How do we make a fight with this one? The fact that DAZN is not in the traditional pay-per-view business still, to me, is a monster problem to these fights happening. Why could we possibly get Fury Wilder? Actually, we are getting it in February.
Right.
Because Fox and ESPN are able, with their co-pay-per-view models, to come together and team up in the promotion and the production of it. That happened for Mayweather Pacquiao. That happened for Mike Tyson, Lennox Lewis. It rarely ever happens unless the fight is big enough. I have asked everybody over the last year, DAZN side, PBC side, the fighters, the managers, everybody said, look, is it possible that a DAZN superstar fighter like an Anthony Joshua could fight a Deontay Wilder or a Tyson Fury from another network where it was a joint network deal? And everyone sort of says, well, because there's a male end and a female end that don't connect here. If you are coming out and being all sports streaming app and DAZN and your motto is we killed the pay-per-view business, how are you going to do a joint effort with somebody else unless you get into the pay-per-view business? So until I see something rectified and those two models not coming together, it's not like Al Heyman's going to say, go ahead, Deontay, go over and fight on DAZN. No, not going to happen. Bob Arum's not going to say, okay, Tyson Fury, go fight him on DAZN. Everyone's in their own house saying, you got to come to me. So you're really going to have to wait until the model changes or somebody's contract runs out before we can see these, and that's sad.
It's certainly revealing that in the case of, let's look at Mayweather-McGregor, yes, it was a boxing match, but ultimately, who were the two promoters? You had an MMA promoter working with Showtime and Mayweather Promotions together. I mean, across sports, quite literally. But the reason they could make that happen, to the point you just nicely articulated, is that ultimately, at the time, what underpinned them both was a similar kind of business model, a similar kind of output, and a deliverable to the product that made, yes, I'm sure negotiations a little bit difficult, but in the end, not insurmountable, because in the end, they all had a very similar kind of goal for revenue sharing and distribution of the product. DAZN kind of complicates that to a pretty significant degree.
You want to talk about a big win for AJ? Even bigger win for DAZN. If you're in the weeds on the business, that was a big win for DAZN.
Did you see the numbers in Sky Sports, by the way,
Yes.
for the pay-per-view? 1.6 million.
That country's not that big, by the way.
But yeah, just in the UK, that is an extremely high number. So to your point, he probably is the biggest star in global boxing, but at least in terms of the heavyweights anyway. But in terms of getting an action fight, I saw some people be like, yeah, I can't wait till he fights Wilder. Well, yeah, pull a seat up, because it's going to be a while.
Yeah, don't forget Wilder got offered like $120 million for a 4-fight deal from DAZN earlier this year and turned it down. So
Right.
it is what it is.